My name is Sloane Vega, and I am 31 years old. At 8:17 p.m., on the night of the Phoenix Children's Hospital donor gala, I stood near the dessert table with lemon glaze drying sticky on my thumb, my 7-year-old son asleep against my hip, and my father holding a microphone like he had paid for the air inside the ballroom. The music was soft enough that I could hear silverware touching china under it, that thin metallic sound people make when they are pretending not to listen. Nico's body was warm and heavy from a hospital shift day that had stretched too long, and the wool edge of my blue scrub jacket scratched my bare arm over the black dress I had changed into in the staff locker room. I remember that scratch better than the chandelier. I remember the taste of old coffee still bitter at the back of my tongue. My parents had used my 7-year-old son's social security number to open equipment debt for my father's roofing company. Then they stood in front of 240 people and called it helping him inherit a future. My father smiled at donors, nurses, surgeons, school parents, and 2 bank officers standing near the silent auction table. My mother touched the pearls at her throat and kept her face arranged in the careful expression she used at church when she wanted cruelty to look like concern. Then my father turned the microphone toward me and said, "My daughter is a good mother, but she is overprotective in ways that keep a boy small." Nico slept through it. I did not. They thought the room belonged to them because they had the microphone. By midnight, the signatures they trusted would be sitting in a prosecutor's folder. Welcome to By Then I Knew, where quiet people survive loud betrayals, and the truth usually arrives with a date, a signature, and someone who kept the right piece of paper. If stories about dignified justice and family truth matter to you, subscribe and stay with me. Drop your city and what time it is where you're listening from. I always like knowing where these stories find people. Now, let me take you back to the first time my parents decided I was too soft to understand danger. I was 8 years old the first time I learned that my father only respected work if he could turn it into a story about himself. It was science night at my elementary school, held in the cafeteria where the folding tables shook every time somebody leaned on them and the floor smelled like paste, pizza sauce, and wax. The janitors had buffed the tile that afternoon, so every overhead fluorescent light came back at us from below in pale strips. Children stood behind trifold boards with glitter letters. Parents bent over projects and nodded too hard. Somewhere near the stage, a boy dropped a cup of dry beans, and they scattered across the floor like hail. My project was a lung model made from a plastic bottle, 2 red balloons, a straw, and a piece of tape that kept lifting at one corner. Alma had helped me make it at her kitchen table. She had made me rehearse the explanations 6 times, not because she thought I would forget it, but because she said panic was less likely to visit a room where preparation had already taken a chair. She sat with me the night before in her Maryvale kitchen, balancing a peppermint candy on the edge of her saucer, while I pulled the bottom balloon down and explained how the lung balloon expanded when pressure changed. I remember her blue pen beside her checkbook. I remember the smell of cinnamon tea and the rough plastic rim of the bottle against my palm. After the 6th practice, she tapped the table twice and told me my voice sounded like it knew where it was going. My father came late. He always came late when the event was mine. He came in work boots, leaving faint tan dust on the polished cafeteria floor, and I heard the squeak of his soles before I saw him. Ronan was with him, 12 years old, and carrying his Pinewood Derby trophy from the previous week, because Warren said it deserved to be shown to people who appreciated craft. The trophy was not part of science night. It still sat on the table next to my lung model within 3 minutes of their arrival. My mother arrived beside them in a cream sweater set, holding her purse tight under her arm like she had been assigned to keep dignity from leaking out of the evening. She kissed the air near my hair and asked if my poster board was supposed to be crooked. I had drawn lungs in purple marker. The left lung was too small. The right lung had 4 accidental smudges where my hand brushed the ink before it dried. Alma had told me bodies were not symmetrical anyway, and that had settled me. My mother pressed her thumbnail against one smudge and sighed. Then another father came over. He had a son with a volcano that used baking soda and vinegar. My father shook his hand, leaned against my table, and pointed first at Ronan's Derby trophy. He said Ronan had shaped the car himself, sanded it himself, weighed it 3 times, and found a better axle balance than boys twice his age. Ronan looked at the floor, but he did not correct him. The trophy gleamed under cafeteria light. Then the man looked at my bottle and balloons. I pulled the bottom balloon down. The red balloon inside the bottle expanded. It stuck to my fingers because the latex was warm from my hand, and when I let go, it snapped back with a soft sound. I started to explain pressure, diaphragm movement, and why breathing depended on parts working together that most people never saw. My father smiled the way men smile when they have already decided they are being generous. "That's cute, Sloane. Your brother builds," you explain. The other father laughed because my father laughed first. I did not cry. I still had 5 more families to show the model to before the evening ended, and Alma was standing near the cafeteria doors with her coat folded over one arm, watching me as if the room had not decided anything yet. I pulled the balloon down again. I explained the diaphragm. I kept my voice steady. The straw smelled faintly like plastic, and my fingers smelled like latex for the rest of the night. That was the first small record my body kept. Warren admired things that looked solid from the outside. Roofs, trucks, trophies, boys with sawdust on their sleeves. He did not know how to respect the invisible work that kept a chest rising. By 16, I had learned to move before adults finished deciding who should be in charge. It was Thanksgiving at my mother's house, the year she insisted on hosting 22 people even though the kitchen only seated 8. The air smelled like turkey grease, cinnamon, and the sweet steam rising off candied yams. A cousin's toddler wandered near the dessert table, face shiny with pie filling, and then the sound changed. Breathing sounds change before faces do. He stopped babbling. His shoulders climbed. His ribs pulled in with each breath, small spaces caving where they should not. I counted without meaning to. 44 breaths in 1 minute. Too fast, too tight, too much work for a body that small. I told my aunt to call 911. I moved 3 chairs back with my foot. I asked someone to take the pecan pie away because the crowd kept pressing toward the child and I needed space. A cranberry knife clinked against a plate because somebody's hand was shaking. Warren pointed at Ronan and told him to handle it, but Ronan stood frozen by the refrigerator with his mouth half open. I stayed beside the toddler. I lowered my voice. I counted again. I listened for air. When the paramedics came, one of them nodded at me after I gave the numbers. Respiratory rate, onset, exposure, color, retractions, time. Later, when relatives arrived late and asked what happened, Gloria poured coffee with hands that had stopped trembling and said, "Sloane gets dramatic around sickness." Ronan kept everyone calm. Ronan looked at me. He looked away. That was the second record. In our family, calm action could be stolen if the right person narrated it after the danger passed. At 23, I caught a mistake in a hospital billing office hallway because I was early for a shift and tired enough to read slowly. The hallway smelled like copier heat and burnt coffee. I held a paper cup that had gone cold after 17 minutes while a respiratory supply report waited in my hand. One code appeared 8 times where it did not belong. It would have cost the unit $70,000 over the quarter, maybe more if nobody caught it before the next purchase cycle. My supervisor thanked me. She said careful eyes saved equipment as surely as quick hands did. At Sunday lunch, Warren laughed into his iced tea and said, "Only you could make paperwork sound like heroism." A week later, he asked me to review an insurance form for his company because Gloria said I was good with tiny details. I did it. That was the third record. They mocked the skill until they needed it. Alma Torres never mocked carefulness. Her kitchen in Maryvale had yellow Formica counters and a table with a tiny burn mark near the sugar bowl from a pan she once set down too quickly in 1989. She kept peppermint candies in a silver tin that clicked when she opened it, and her checkbooks were balanced in blue ink so neat it made numbers look obedient. When I visited with Nico, she would turn the ceiling fan down because she said sick children should not have to compete with moving air. In 2021, Nico was 4 and asleep on her couch with a nebulizer mask beside him. The machine had finished 11 minutes earlier, but the plastic still carried that warm medical smell, medicine and tubing, and washed cotton. Nico's small hand rested on the hospital bear he had gotten after a winter admission, the bear with one missing button eye that Alma had promised to mend and never did, because Nico decided the bear looked braver that way. Warren and Gloria had come over after church. Warren wore a collared shirt with the Keats Roofing logo stitched in red over his chest. and his gold contractor's watch slid loose on his wrist. He kept tapping it against Alma's table while he talked about growth, payroll, and family planning. Gloria sat beside him with her ankles crossed and her handbag centered on her lap, nodding before he finished each sentence. Nico slept through most of it. Then Warren asked me where Nico's birth certificate was. He made it sound casual. He said family business planning required knowing where the important documents were. He said legacy needed organization. He said a boy should have his name connected to something real before the world taught him to expect handouts. The kitchen light was warm. The tea kettle clicked once. Alma's face changed so slightly that I missed it in the moment. She did not widen her eyes. She did not accuse him. She only stopped moving her thumb over the peppermint tin. Gloria smiled and told me not to look so worried. She said Warren was thinking ahead. She said some mothers held their children so close they forgot to build a future for them. I looked at Nico's sleeping chest. In, out, in, out. I counted 12 breaths before I answered that the documents were safe. Warren tapped his watch 3 times. After they left, Alma did not speak for nearly a full minute. Their car backed down the driveway, the engine fading into the street noise of late afternoon. The house smelled like peppermint and the Vicks she kept in the hallway cabinet. The couch springs made a small, tired sound when she lowered herself into the chair across from me. Then she asked me to bring her Nico's medical folder, his social security card copy, and the trust papers from the hallway cabinet. I asked why. She looked toward the window over the sink, where the sun had gone flat and orange against the neighbor's block wall, and said some sentences, as if she had been carrying them for years. Some people hear a child's name and think future. Some people hear it and think access. She made tea neither of us drank. The mug sat between us until the surface cooled and a thin skin formed on top. She did not make me feel foolish for being careful. She never did. When I double-checked forms, she called it respect. When I kept medication times written down, she called it attention. When I charted hospital details after 12 hours on my feet, she called it love with timestamps. Warren had always made care sound small. Alma made it sound exact. She opened a small red metal lockbox from the bottom shelf of the pantry. It had once held savings bonds, hospital volunteer pins, and the folded bills she kept for emergency grocery money. The paint was chipped along the corner, and the hinges gave a dry metal squeal when she lifted the lid. Inside were envelopes, paper-clipped by year, and one red key tied to a paper tag in her handwriting. She removed the key and held it in her palm. Then she asked me for the little inhaler charm I still kept on my key ring, a childish silver thing from when I was 10 and had my own asthma flare bad enough to learn that breathing could be measured, treated, and protected. I had kept it because children keep strange proofs of survival. Alma threaded the red lockbox key onto the charm and pressed it into my hand. The key was cool at first, then warm from her fingers. "Keep this where your hands can find it before your feelings can." Those were the words. Not dramatic, not frightened, practical. Alma's kind of love always had instructions. Over the next 2 hours, she walked me through what she had done. A notarized minor credit freeze request, a trust restriction barring family business borrowing against Nico's name, a handwritten instruction card listing the county attorney's financial crimes office, because she said police sometimes understood harm better when a prosecutor already had the paper arranged. She had noticed Warren's interest in Nico's documents before I had let myself name it. She had planted a fence around a child's future using signatures, dates, and blue ink. I told her it seemed like too much. She tapped the red key against the table once and told me too much was what people said when protection arrived before damage. Alma died at 82, and after the funeral I put the lockbox on the top shelf of my hall closet behind winter blankets we barely used in Phoenix. I carried the red key on the inhaler charm for 3 weeks, then took it off and tucked it into the pocket of the black dress I wore to formal hospital events. I do not know why that dress. Maybe because I wore it when people expected me to look softer than I was. Maybe because Alma had told me my hands should find the key before my feelings did, and pockets remember what minds misplace. For a long time, I believed the lockbox was a careful old woman's habit. My work kept me from thinking about it too often. At Phoenix Children's Hospital, care was not soft. It was loud monitors, dry hands, masks leaving marks across small faces. parents trying not to cry while asking how much oxygen was too much. I worked pediatric respiratory because children told the truth with their bodies before they had words for fear. A chest pulling too hard, lips changing color, fingers curling into sheets, numbers falling on a screen with no respect for anyone's plans. One Tuesday evening, during a shift that had already run 9 hours, a 6-year-old patient crashed in a crowded room while a transport team was delayed. The hallway smelled like sanitizer and warmed plastic. A mother kept whispering the child's name into the sheet. The saturation dipped, then dipped again. 88, 84, 81. Voices rose. A monitor alarm sharpened the air. Someone asked where the attending was. Someone else reached for tubing without looking at the connection. I counted 10 seconds. I checked the tubing first because panic loves the dramatic answer, and air often needs the simple one. The line had kinked under the rail where a blanket bunched against it. I cleared it, adjusted flow, watched the chest, listened to the change, and spoke low enough that the mother heard steadiness instead of alarm. I told her when to breathe with me. I told the child when air was coming. I counted again. 7 seconds, 12, 30. The saturation climbed slowly, stubbornly, like a reluctant witness. 84, 87. 91. When the attending arrived, the room had already changed temperature. Yvette Crown, my charge nurse, stood by the doorway with her close-cropped gray hair and a chart tucked under one arm. Later, after the child stabilized, she handed me a clean mask and said, "You bought that child 4 clean minutes before the attending got there." I did not boast. I logged the time. I checked the chart twice. I washed my hands until the soap smell replaced the plastic smell. Then I went back to work. That was my life before the Gala invitation. Shifts, Nico's school folders, medication refills, grocery lists written on receipts. Alma's lockbox sleeping on a closet shelf while I mistook preparation for memory. Then an envelope arrived with my son's name on it, and I understood that old paper can wait longer than pride can. Care counts what pride ignores. The envelope came on a Thursday at 7:06 p.m., 2 days before the Phoenix Children's Hospital donor gala. I was at the kitchen counter after a 1-2 hour hospital shift, still wearing compression socks under my work pants, opening mail with the edge of a butter knife because the proper letter opener had disappeared into Nico's art drawer. He sat at the table coloring a paper rocket blue and orange, the tip of his tongue pressed between his teeth, the way it always did when he was concentrating. Crayon wax streaked one sleeve. The refrigerator hummed behind me. A load of towels thumped unevenly in the dryer. The first thing I noticed was not fear. It was sequence. At work, when a child starts struggling, my mind moves in order. Airway, breathing, circulation. You do not begin with the loudest person in the room. You begin with what keeps someone alive. At my kitchen counter, with hospital coffee bitter in my mouth and lemon soap drying along my knuckles, the order came back in a different language. Document, deadline, authority. The envelope was addressed to Nico Astor, care of Keats Roofing and Restoration. My son's name sat above my father's company name as if a 7-year-old boy who still asked me to cut the crust off toast had become a business contact. The return address belonged to a lender I recognized from hospital donor lists, not because I had ever borrowed from them, but because their sponsorship logo appeared beside names of people who liked their generosity photographed. I did not call Warren. I did not call Gloria. I placed the letter flat on the counter. I washed my hands even though they were already clean. I remember the lemon soap smell because it seemed too bright for that moment, too ordinary. I dried each finger carefully on a dish towel with a frayed edge. Then I took 3 photos of the envelope before opening the inner page. Paper fibers caught under my thumb as I unfolded it. The first line referenced an equipment lease package. The second line named Keats Roofing and Restoration. The third line referred to a pending courier pickup tied to Saturday midnight. Saturday midnight. The hospital gala was Saturday evening. Nico slid the paper rocket toward me and asked if flames should be red or yellow. I told him both. My voice did not change. He added 5 red lines beneath the orange and made engine noises under his breath. I read the page twice, then a third time, slower. I looked at the confirmation number. I looked at Nico's name. I looked at the phrase debtor contact and felt my breathing narrow, not in panic, but in the old childhood way that made the inhaler charm on the red key seem less symbolic than it had that morning. My father had not asked me for Nico's birth certificate since Alma's kitchen in 2021. Gloria had asked once about school forms, but I had answered with enough vagueness that she lost interest. I had kept the real documents secured. I had believed that was enough. It had not been enough. The letter lay on the counter between a grocery receipt and Nico's rocket. I counted the seconds between the dryer thumps because my hands needed something regular. 1, 2, 3, 4. On 9, I took another photograph. On 14, I opened a folder on my phone and named it Nico Credit File. On 22, I began saving everything. I called Callum Reed first. His name was on the donor list because the Gala committee had sent staff a digital program earlier that week, the kind with sponsor names and smiling headshots. He was listed as a bank fraud officer and donor guest. I had never met him. I still called because the letter carried a lender name, and I had learned not to waste the first 20 minutes of a crisis trying to make people comfortable. He answered on the 4th ring. I gave him my name, my job, the envelope details, and the confirmation number. I did not give him a long family history. I did not say betrayal. I did not say fear. I said 7-year-old minor. Equipment lease package. Pending courier pickup. Saturday midnight. His voice changed after that. Not louder. Sharper. He told me not to confront my father. He asked whether Nico's credit was frozen. That question opened Alma's kitchen again. I looked down the hallway toward the closet, where the red lockbox sat behind folded blankets, and for 3 seconds, I smelled peppermint instead of lemon soap. I heard Alma's tin click. I heard her saying some people heard a child's name and thought access. I told Callum I might have documents. He told me to gather them, photograph everything, avoid altering the envelope, and contact the county attorney's financial crimes office if the packet said to. He gave me 2 names. The first one was not available. The second was Augustin Vale. Nico finished his rocket and taped it to the refrigerator with 4 crooked strips of masking tape. I made him dinner. I rinsed his plate. I gave him the blue cup because the green one had a crack near the rim. I listened to him tell me that rockets probably had seat belts because astronauts were brave but not foolish. After he went to sleep, I took the step stool from the laundry room and reached for Alma's lockbox. The red metal box was heavier than I remembered. Dust lined the lid, soft and gray, and when I pulled it down, one corner scraped the closet shelf with a sound that made me pause. The house was quiet except for the refrigerator, the dryer, and Nico's sleep sounds through the baby monitor I still used out of habit after winter illnesses. His breathing came slow and even. I counted 6 breaths before opening the box. The key was not on my keyring. It was where my hands could find it before my feelings could, in the pocket of the black dress. I found it hanging in the back of my closet, still sealed in a dry cleaning bag from a hospital fundraiser 14 months earlier. Beneath the dress fabric, in the right pocket, my fingers closed around the inhaler charm and the red key Alma had tied to it. The metal was warm from the closet heat, not from a hand this time, and its ridges pressed into my skin with a familiarity I had not earned yet. Inside the lockbox were envelopes in Alma's blue handwriting. Nico minor credit freeze. Nico trust restriction. Nico if Warren asks again. I sat on the hallway floor because my knees had stopped wanting to stand. Not collapsed, just done pretending. The freeze packet was notarized in 2021. The trust restriction barred family business borrowing against Nico's name, identity, assets, or future trust interest without court approval. There was a copy of Nico's social security card, marked Copy in blue ink across the top. There was a handwritten instruction card listing the county attorney's financial crimes office and the phrase attempted identity fraud involving a minor child. Alma had written it 5 years before I needed it. I photographed each page. I placed them in plastic sleeves from Nico's school binder. I texted Callum. The packet existed. Then I called the number on the instruction card and left a message with Augustin Vale's office at 8:42 p.m. He called me back at 9:11. His voice was careful, complete, and plain. He did not make sympathetic sounds. He asked for dates, documents, names, the deadline, and whether the lender had already funded. When I said Saturday midnight, he went silent long enough for me to count 5 seconds. Then, he told me to come in Friday morning at 9:30 a.m. The county office smelled like paper, toner, and rain on concrete. Though Phoenix had only given us a brief wet smear across the parking lot that morning, the waiting chairs were hard and covered in gray fabric worn smooth at the front edge. I held Alma's packet in both hands. A man in a baseball cap argued softly with a clerk behind glass. Somewhere down the hall, a printer jammed and beeped 6 times before someone opened it. Augustin Vale came out at 9:31. He was 43, with rimless glasses and the stillness of someone trained to wait for facts before moving. He shook my hand once, not too firmly, then led me into a conference room with 4 chairs, a rectangular table, and no art on the walls. I appreciated that. Bad news does not need decoration. He reviewed Alma's packet page by page. He did not flatter her. He did not dismiss her. He read every signature. He checked the notary date. He matched the trust restriction to the wording in the lender letter. He asked me to confirm Nico's date of birth. He asked if Warren had access to my mailbox. He asked if Gloria had ever handled school or medical forms. He asked whether I had confronted either of them. No. He looked relieved at that. Then he explained it in language that did not waste breath. The trust restriction existed. The freeze packet was valid if submitted with a minor identity affidavit. If the loan funded before the hold, unwinding it would become harder. Nico's credit record could become contaminated. The lender's courier pickup was not a casual deadline. It was a gate. Midnight Saturday. That was when the equipment lease package was scheduled to move. He placed a yellow sticky note on the table and wrote 3 words in block letters. File, hold, notify. Then he looked at me over his glasses and said this needed to happen before the gala ended, because Warren had arranged the public event, the lender presence, and the courier schedule in the same 6-hour window. He did not say my father was clever. He did not say my father was cruel. He said the timing suggested intent. Intent was a cleaner word than the ones my body had available. If this story is hitting close to home, comment lockbox below, not because every family has one, but because some of us learn to keep proof where love should have been. Now back to the story. Friday afternoon, Warren called me from a job site. Wind hit the phone so hard I heard plastic sheeting snapping in the background. He did not ask how Nico was. He did not ask whether I had received anything strange in the mail. He asked what I planned to wear to the gala and told me it would be a good night to stop making everything medical and small. He said donors liked confidence. He said Nico should be seen with the family. He said boys learned posture from men who built things. While he talked, I looked at the lender envelope sealed in a plastic sleeve on my table. Paper looked so harmless until you understood whose name had been placed inside it. Warren's gold contractor's watch clicked against something on his end of the line. Maybe a truck door, maybe scaffolding. The sound was small and hard. I told him Nico and I would be there. He laughed once and said, "Good girl," before correcting himself to good. Gloria texted 18 minutes later. It was a photo of Nico's suit laid out on her guest bed. Navy jacket, white shirt, tiny shoes lined neatly at the foot like props. Her message said he should look like part of the family future. I screenshotted it. I saved it to the folder. That night, at the pre-gala donor reception, I arrived 12 minutes late because Nico's inhaler refill had taken longer than the pharmacy promised. The room was smaller than the ballroom would be the next evening, but it held the same perfume of money trying to smell like kindness. White wine, lilies, wood polish. Warren stood near 2 bank officers with a champagne flute in his left hand and his gold watch loose on his right wrist. He tapped the watch against the glass as he spoke. Not once, 4 times in the 3 minutes I watched him. He told them Nico would inherit work ethic before he inherited excuses. One bank officer smiled, with only half his mouth. The other looked down at his drink. Gloria touched my elbow as if we were posing for a photograph and told me to try not to make my worried face tomorrow because donors noticed. Her fingers were cool. Her smile was warm enough for strangers. I turned my elbow slightly so her hand fell away. She noticed. Of course she did. Gloria noticed every small public movement except the ones that mattered. Friday night became paper. At 10:06 p.m., after Nico fell asleep with the hospital bear tucked under his chin, I spread everything across my kitchen table. Lender envelope photos. Nico's social security card copy. Alma's trust language. Screenshots of Gloria's text. Warren's voicemail. Callum's instructions. Augustin's card. The notarized freeze packet from the red lockbox. I wrote times on sticky notes, because times are harder to argue with than feelings. 7:06 p.m. M. Envelope opened. 8:42 p.m. Message left for county attorney. 9:11 p.m. Return call. 9:30 a.m. Meeting. 6:58 p.m. Saturday, final call. Midnight funding deadline. The sticky notes made the table look like a shift board during flu season. That helped. I understood shift boards. I understood triage. I understood that fear became smaller when given a place to stand. At 1:12 a.m., Saturday, I sat on the bathroom floor so I would not wake Nico. The tile was cold through my sleep pants. The room smelled faintly of toothpaste, damp towels, and the lavender soap Alma used to buy me because she said hospital soap made everyone smell lonely. The red key rested flat in my palm. I pressed the grooves into my skin until they left an imprint. The inhaler charm touched the base of my thumb, smooth and worn from years of being rubbed by a child who had once been afraid of her own lungs. Hands first. Feelings after. I did not cry then either. Tears would have been fair. They just did not come. My body had chosen another job. At 1:26 a.m., my phone lit up. Ronan. I almost let it go. My brother had spent most of his adult life making peace with whatever version of events made Warren proudest. He was 35, worked in insurance sales, and had inherited Warren's square jaw but Alma's habit of rubbing his thumb over his wedding ring when he was unsure. He had called me 3 times in the previous month, each time about something harmless. A birthday gift, a school pickup question, whether I still had Alma's recipe for green chili stew. I answered. For the first 9 seconds, he said nothing. I heard a television low in the background and the rustle of paper. Then he told me Warren had sent a group text about family expansion financing. Ronan's voice was careful in a way I did not recognize from him. He said he did not know what it meant. He said he did not fully believe Dad would do anything wrong. Then he exhaled hard and said, I don't know what this is. I just know Dad told me not to send it to you. He forwarded the thread. There it was. Warren's language, family legacy, equipment package, Nico's future interest. Timing aligned with donor visibility. Gloria's reply with 3 clapping hands, emojis, and a sentence about presenting Unity at the Gala. Unity. I saved the thread. Ronan stayed on the phone. He did not apologize. He did not defend Warren either. That was new enough to count. At 6:40 a.m., I emailed Augustin the thread. At 7:15, Yvette Crown called because I had asked if my shift could be shortened by 1 hour. I did not give her the whole story. She did not ask for it. She listened to the first 4 sentences, then said she would cover the hour herself. Her voice was rough from night shift coffee. She said, go handle the paper before the paper handles you. That sentence carried me through Saturday. Hospital work does not pause because your family has chosen a felony. I spent the day checking oxygen levels, changing tubing, calming parents, and charting details that might matter to someone on the next shift. At 2:18 p.m., a child threw up grape juice on my shoe. At 3:03, a father asked me if a number on the monitor was bad, and I explained what it meant without letting my face carry more than the number required. At 4:22, I signed out early with Yvette's initials beside mine on the coverage sheet. She squeezed my shoulder once. Not comfort, permission. Saturday evening, I dressed for the gala in the staff locker room. The black dress had 1 pocket on the right side. The red key went there first. Then my phone. Then a folded copy of Augustin's card. The blue scrub jacket stayed with me because I had come directly from the hospital, and because, practical or not, it smelled faintly like sanitizer and work. I wanted work near me. Nico changed in the back seat of the car with the grace of a sleepy child. His collar sat crooked. His hair would not lie flat on one side. He held the hospital bear against his stomach and asked if Gala's had French fries. I told him maybe not, but I had crackers in my bag. He accepted this as proof the evening could be survived. The Phoenix evening smelled like dust, orange blossoms, and hot asphalt cooling after sunset. The sky had gone copper at the edges. Traffic moved slow near the hospital, and the parking garage held the day's heat in concrete layers. Nico fell asleep before we reached the second level. I parked 6 spaces from Warren's truck. It was clean for once. Polished. The magnetic Keats roofing sign on the door looked newly wiped, red letters bright under garage lights. For 1 second, only one, I considered leaving Nico with a sitter and handling everything quietly Monday. I could stop the loan. I could avoid the ballroom. I could keep his name out of a public scene. Then I looked at the envelope in my bag with my child's name on it. I counted Nico's sleeping breaths, 18 inches a minute. Normal. Protected. At 6:58 p.m., Augustin called. He was already inside as an invited donor guest. He had authority to receive the affidavit if I signed it in person. Callum Reed had confirmed 2 bank officers were present and could freeze the lender side once Augustin activated the county hold. I asked if the timing still mattered. He said, midnight still mattered. I lifted Nico from his car seat. His weight settled against my hip, heavy and trusting. The bear pressed between us, soft fur worn thin along one ear. I felt the red key under my dress, flat against my thigh, as I stepped into the elevator. When the doors opened, music reached us first. Warren was already testing the microphone. The Phoenix Children's Hospital Donor Gala was held in a ballroom designed to make generosity look effortless. It smelled like lemon glaze, polished wood, lilies, and warm linen napkins. A string quartet played near the silent auction table, their bows moving in smooth lines that made the room seem calmer than it was. Glasses clicked. The crystal chandelier threw small squares of light across blue tablecloths. Waiters moved between tables with trays held high, their sleeves brushed clean, their shoes nearly silent on the patterned carpet. My blue scrub jacket felt too practical against the formal dresses. Gloria noticed it in less than 2 seconds. Her eyes moved from my hair, still in the low knot I wore for long shifts, to the jacket, to Nico asleep against my shoulder. She smiled as if she had found something she could correct later. Her cream blazer was sharp at the shoulders. Her pearl necklace sat centered at her throat, and her lipstick had not moved from the exact lines she had drawn around it. There were 240 witnesses in that room. I counted them from the program, not by faces. Surgeons, nurses, donors, hospital board spouses, school parents, 2 bank officers. People who knew Warren from church, construction work, charity breakfasts, and the kind of ribbon cuttings where men in branded shirts stand beside oversized scissors. There were 240 people who would have let a sentence become truth if no one brought paper to answer it. Warren stood near the dessert table with the microphone already in his hand. His gold watch was visible beneath his cuff, loose, as always. He liked it that way because the slide of it made people notice the weight. He was laughing with a donor when I entered, mouth open, head tilted back. The posture of a man who believed admiration was a room's natural climate. Gloria stood beside him, smiling at donors before she knew what Warren planned to say. Or maybe she knew. I have stopped giving her the innocence she never gave me. Nico shifted in his sleep. His cheek was warm against my collarbone. The hospital bear's missing button eye faced the room. Yvette Crown saw me from table 12. She had changed out of scrubs into a dark green dress, but her posture still belonged to the charge desk. She lifted her chin once. Not a wave. A marker. I see you. Callum Reed stood near the silent auction display with a black pen clipped to his shirt pocket. He looked at me, then at my bag, then toward the 2 bank officers near the dessert table. Augustin Vale was at the back of the room, rimless glasses catching chandelier light, hands folded in front of him as if he were waiting for a hearing to begin. At 8:11 p.m., the hospital director finished thanking donors. At 8:13, a board member introduced the final family gratitude portion. At 8:15, Warren moved closer to the microphone before anyone asked him to. At 8:17, he took it. He asked for 1 minute. People laughed because men like Warren ask for 1 minute when they have already taken more. He began well. That was the part that made it dangerous. He praised Phoenix Children's for saving children. He thanked nurses for unseen hours. He said families remembered the people who helped their children breathe. His voice warmed on the word breathe, and I watched Yvette's face change because she knew he had never once asked what my job required. Then he turned toward Nico. A boy needed legacy, he said, not fear. A boy needed to know where he came from. A boy needed men around him who built instead of worried. He told the room I had always been careful with Nico, too careful. He chuckled, inviting the room to forgive me before I had spoken. Gloria's hand rose to her pearls. Warren looked at me as if he were blessing me. My daughter is a good mother, Warren says, smiling toward the donors, but she is overprotective in ways that keep a boy small. The room did not gasp. Rooms rarely gasp all at once. They adjust. Yvette lowered her dessert fork first. The fork touched china with a small, clean sound, and her hand stayed there. Callum Reed turned his head toward the bank officers, not fast, but fully. Maura Finch, the PTA president from Nico's school, stopped clapping before anyone else did and looked at Nico asleep against my shoulder. Her reading glasses hung from a beaded chain that tapped once against her plate. Gloria kept smiling, but her fingers closed around her pearl necklace, so tightly the skin at her knuckles lightened. I counted the silence after Warren's sentence. 1, 2, 3. At 4, someone near the back shifted in a chair. At 5, Nico breathed warm against my neck. At 6, Warren mistook quiet for permission. At 7, I adjusted the bear under Nico's arm. At 8, I looked at my father the way I read a monitor. Not hoping the numbers would change. Watching what was true. Pause here. What do you think Sloane does next? A. She leaves quietly. B. She confronts them at the microphone. C. She brings in the county attorney. Drop A, B, or C below, and subscribe if you haven't, because the next 10 minutes are the reason this story exists. I did not take the microphone. That surprised people more than a speech would have. I shifted Nico's weight to my left hip and walked toward the side office near the registration table. My heels made almost no sound on the carpet. The music had stopped between pieces, and the room had that hollow, waiting air that comes before someone decides whether cruelty will be treated as humor. Augustin stepped away from the wall. Callum followed 3 paces behind. The side office was small and overheated from a copier that had been running programs all evening. It smelled like toner, lilies from a spare centerpiece, and the sour edge of coffee gone cold in a paper cup. A staff radio crackled on the desk. Nico stirred but did not wake. I opened my small black clutch. The red key was underneath a packet of crackers, my phone, and a folded tissue Nico had used in the car. When I pulled it out, the inhaler charm swung once and hit my ring finger. The sound was tiny. Metal on skin. Alma's kitchen returned in a single breath. Peppermint, yellow formica, the burn mark near the sugar bowl, her hand pressing the key into mine. Hands first. I unlocked the red box. Its hinge complained softly, the same dry metal squeal from the hallway floor, and inside were the plastic sleeves I had prepared. Alma's notarized credit freeze packet sat on top. Beneath it were the trust restriction, the lender confirmation, the screenshots, Ronan's forwarded text thread, and my printed timeline with sticky notes flattened under binder clips. Augustin placed an affidavit on the desk. Callum removed his black pen from his shirt pocket and set it beside the page. But Augustin stopped him with one hand and gave me his own, county pen, blue ink. I read the affidavit, all 3 pages. I initialed 4 places. I signed my name once. Then I looked at Augustine and said, "Before my father says another word about my son's future, I need the county to receive this." My voice was quiet enough that the event coordinator leaned in to hear it. Augustine nodded once. He signed as witness. Callum took the lender confirmation number and stepped into the hall to call the bank's fraud desk. I heard him say minor identity issue, suspected fraudulent equipment financing, urgent hold before courier pickup. His voice had no decoration. Good paper creates its own force. We returned to the ballroom at 8:29. Warren was still speaking. Of course he was. He had moved from family gratitude into a story about self-made men, work ethic, and children needing examples. A few people had started eating again because discomfort gets easier when forks can move. Gloria stood beside him with the same fixed smile, though her eyes kept darting toward the side office door. When she saw me return with Augustin, the smile thinned. Augustin did not hurry. He walked to the event coordinator and asked for the microphone to be turned back on. The coordinator looked at Warren, then at Augustin's county badge, then at me. She made the correct choice. The microphone gave a low thump when it changed hands. Warren reached for it first, laughing as if the moment belonged to him and had merely wandered. Augustin did not raise his voice. He only held the microphone at chest height and identified himself as a deputy county attorney. That changed the room. Not dramatically. Precisely. The string quartet stopped tuning. A waiter froze near table 9 with 5 plates balanced along his arm. One of the bank officers set his champagne glass on the dessert table without looking away. Maura Finch took off her reading glasses and let them hang from the beaded chain. Yvette stood halfway from her chair, one hand pressed to the table as if stopping herself from crossing the room. Augustin spoke in the same tone he had used in the conference room. This office has received a sworn affidavit alleging attempted identity fraud involving a minor child. The lender package attached to that affidavit names Nico Astor, age 7, as the debtor contact on equipment financing connected to Keats Roofing and Restoration. There are sentences that remove oxygen from a room without raising their volume. That was one. Warren's hand tightened around the microphone. He no longer held until his knuckles paled. His gold watch slid down his wrist and stopped against the base of his thumb. Gloria's mouth kept the shape of a smile for 2 seconds too long, then fell apart at the corners. She looked older in that instant. Not because truth ages people, because performance takes muscle, and hers had failed. Callum Reed stepped beside Augustin and raised his black pen slightly, as if marking a file only he could see. He said the lender had been notified and the package was on fraud hold pending review. Maura Finch turned toward the nearest table and said, quietly but clearly, "He is 7. No quotation marks in my memory." It was not performance. It was a fact the room needed placed on a flat surface. One bank officer pushed back his chair. The chair legs scraped the floor beneath the carpet with a muffled drag. He did not take his eyes off Warren. The other bank officer stepped away from the dessert table and toward Callum, leaving a half-eaten tart on his plate. Warren tried to laugh. The first attempt failed. The second came out too loud. He said this was family planning. He said Nico was never really responsible. He said Sloane was confused because she did not understand business equipment, financing language, or how men built something lasting. He pointed toward me on the word confused, and 240 people watched him point at a woman holding a sleeping child, whose name he had put in a lender package. Augustin waited for him to stop. Then he named the documents one by one: Social Security number, lender application, equipment lease package, trust restriction, notarized, minor credit freeze packet, sworn affidavit, et. Each item landed with less emotion than Warren's laugh and more force. Gloria stepped forward. She had recovered enough of her church board voice to make cruelty sound tidy again. She said Alma had been old and always dramatic about paperwork. She said a grandmother's fears should not be allowed to embarrass a family in public. She said Warren had only been trying to include Nico in the future. The word old hung there. I thought of Alma's blue ink, her peppermint tin, her hospital volunteer pins in the red box, the burn mark beside the sugar bowl, her hand steady around a key 5 years before anyone else admitted a child's name could be hunted. Callum answered Gloria with one sentence. A child's identifying information used in a financing package cannot be treated as harmless family planning. Gloria looked at him as if bank officers were supposed to understand money only when it defended people like her. Warren tried another path. He said the application was preliminary. He said no funds had moved. He said men like him filled out forms early all the time. He said if there was an error, it would be corrected Monday. Augustin answered that a pending courier pickup tied to a funding deadline was part of the record. Warren said I had always been sensitive about Nico because of his hospital history. Yvette Crown stood all the way then. She did not shout. She did not need to. Charge nurses know how to cut through rooms filled with people pretending not to hear. She said Sloane Vega had documented more emergencies correctly at 3 a.m. than most people in that ballroom had handled at noon. Warren ignored her because women who know what they are talking about had always been background noise to him. He looked at Ronan, who had arrived late and stood near the back wall with his wife. I had not seen him enter. Ronan's thumb moved over his wedding ring once, twice, 3 times. Warren lifted his chin toward him, summoning the old arrangement. Favorite son, public rescue, Male translation. Ronan did not move. That, too, changed the room. Warren's face tightened. He said Ronan could explain that this was normal business practice. Ronan looked at me, then at Nico, then at the microphone in Augustin's hand. His voice was not strong, but it was audible. He said he had forwarded the family expansion financing thread because Dad told him not to send it to me. Gloria made a sound then. Small, sharp, not grief. Calculation wounded by surprise. The event coordinator whispered into her headset. The string quartet sat with instruments lowered in their laps. A donor near the front dropped a fork, and the sound rang clean against china before anyone moved. I had not spoken since the office. That mattered. Loud families depend on the quiet person defending herself until the room mistakes the defense for instability. I did not defend. I held Nico. I let the documents stand where my explanation would have been. Then Warren turned directly toward me. His face had gone red across the cheekbones. The watch slid again when he lifted his hand. He said I was ruining the family over paperwork. He said I had no idea what a missed financing opportunity could cost. He said $420,000 in equipment could have taken his company into the next tier. He said he had built everything with his own hands, and I was letting bureaucrats shame him in front of people who mattered. There he was. Not Nico's future. $420,000. The number stepped out from behind the costume. I shifted Nico higher on my hip. His bear's worn ear brushed my wrist. His breathing stayed even. I counted 4 breaths before I answered. I did not call Warren a thief. I did not call Gloria cruel. I did not explain 31 years of being corrected, dismissed, and used. I said, my son's name is not a line of credit. The microphone was close enough to catch it. The room heard. Warren's mouth opened, but nothing organized came out. Gloria reached for his arm and missed, because he had already stepped back. One of the bank officers spoke quietly into his phone. Callum nodded once, listening to whatever the fraud desk was saying through his earpiece. Augustin held the affidavit folder at his side. I looked at my father and understood that he still thought the worst thing happening was public embarrassment. He thought the loan had been stopped, the donors had been made uncomfortable, and Monday would bring lawyers, explanations, and men he could speak to in private. He did not understand what an affidavit does once it leaves your hand. I could have stopped the money and left the room. But stopping money is not the same as protecting a child. The words were not for Warren. They were for me. Augustin stepped away from the microphone and spoke to the event coordinator. She led him toward the registration table, where the noise of the ballroom had thinned into whispers. I saw him take out his phone. I saw Callum hand one bank officer the confirmation number. I saw Yvette move 2 steps closer to me without touching my arm, because she knew touch should be offered, not claimed. Warren watched Augustin's phone. For the first time that night, his face changed from anger to recognition. The room no longer belonged to him. Documents speak when families perform. I told Augustin in front of Callum and the event coordinator, I am not asking for a private correction. I am reporting identity fraud against my minor child. My voice did not travel far. It did not need to. The people who needed to hear it were close enough. Augustin with the affidavit folder, Callum with the lender confirmation, the event coordinator with one hand pressed to her headset, and Gloria standing 7 feet away, still trying to decide whether a scandal could be folded back into etiquette. I signed the affidavit. I submitted Alma's trust restriction. I provided the lender envelope, the screenshots, and Ronan's forwarded text thread. I authorized the lender fraud hold. Augustin placed the call to Phoenix Police Financial Crimes before the courier pickup deadline, while the final donor announcement remained frozen on the printed program, like another plan that had failed to understand timing. Warren insisted he could fix the application Monday morning. He said it 3 times. The first time, he said it to Augustin. The second time, to Callum. The third time, to no one in particular, which told me he had started hearing himself. Gloria told me to stop embarrassing the family. I answered with the lender confirmation number and Nico's date of birth. That was all. Numbers. The child's age. The file. At 8:51 p.m., Phoenix police arrived at the Gala. 2 uniformed officers entered first, followed by a financial crimes detective in a dark jacket. They met Augustin near the registration table, where name tags had been arranged alphabetically beside a bowl of wrapped mints. The detective was a woman with short black hair and tired eyes. She read the top page of the affidavit, then the lender hold confirmation Callum had helped secure. She asked 4 questions. Augustin answered 2. Callum answered 1. I answered the last. Yes, Nico was my son. Yes, he was 7. Yes, I had custody of his identifying documents. No, I had not authorized any use of his social security number for business financing. The detective nodded. Then she asked Warren and Gloria to step into the hallway. Warren's laugh came back wrong. He said he needed to call his attorney. He said this was ridiculous. He said no one was arresting a man at a hospital charity event for a paperwork issue. He moved toward the side exit, not fast enough to be called running, but fast enough that 2 donors turned their heads. One officer stepped into his path. Gloria raised her voice for the first time that night. Not much, but enough that the polished version cracked. She said, "This is a family misunderstanding." The detective answered, "A minor child's identifying information was used in a financing package. That is not a misunderstanding." The quartet stopped playing mid-note. Warren shouted once, not a full sentence, just my name, hard enough that it cut across the ballroom and made Nico stir against my shoulder. A donor dropped a fork. The event coordinator whispered into her headset so quickly the words blurred together. Yvette moved closer to me, standing just off my right side, close enough that anyone watching would know I was not alone, and careful enough not to touch me without permission. I covered Nico's ear with one hand. I did not smile. I did not answer Warren. I did not tell him he had done this to himself, though the sentence stood available and unused. I watched the way I watch oxygen numbers, carefully, without wishing them higher than they are. The officers escorted Warren and Gloria from the gala before the final donor announcement. Gloria looked back once, not at Nico, at the room. That told me what she believed she had lost. The equipment lease was frozen before midnight. The courier pickup never happened. Within hours, the county attorney's office opened a criminal file for identity fraud and attempted theft involving a minor. By morning, the story had already traveled through quieter channels than social media. Bank calls, board calls, church calls, the soft private machinery of reputation discovering paperwork. The first night after, I slept 2 hours. Nico slept 9. I considered that a better outcome than rest. 8 months later, Warren's contractor license was suspended, pending the criminal case. The $420,000 equipment financing collapsed. Keats Roofing and Restoration lost 2 municipal contracts after the charges became known in business circles, and the gold contractor's watch stopped appearing in photographs. He did not go to prison within those 8 months. Cases move slower than damage, but he faced formal charges, legal fees, and the public loss of the self-made family businessman identity he had polished longer than he had protected anyone. Gloria resigned from the church finance board 3 days before the church would have voted. Her cream blazers still appeared at Sunday service, but she sat farther back, 6 rows from where she used to sit, near a side aisle where people did not need to pass her to reach communion. She sent me one letter. It began with the words, "Your father made mistakes." I placed it in a folder without answering because it named Warren before it named Nico. Ronan came to my apartment 5 months later, with a manila envelope and no speech prepared. That helped. Inside were printed copies of every family business email he could find. He admitted he had enjoyed being believed, more than he had earned it. He did not ask me to forgive him. That mattered. End quote. He asked if Nico needed anything for school. I gave him a list of classroom supplies, 12 glue sticks, 3 composition books, 2 boxes of tissues, and washable markers. Supplies, not access. Nico's credit file stayed clean. I taught him, in child language, that numbers with his name on them belonged to him and that grown-ups had to ask before using them. He did not understand loans yet. He understood that his mother kept the bear, the papers, and him together. For a while, he asked if bad papers could come through the mail again. I told him some could try. I also told him we knew where to take them. 2 hospital families asked me how to freeze their children's credit, then 5 more. Callum helped organize a 1-page resource sheet with plain steps and phone numbers. Yvette placed copies in the parent resource room beside asthma education packets and parking validation instructions. Maura Finch brought the topic to the PTA without naming Nico, and when one father joked that it seemed extreme, she took off her reading glasses and said, "Children did not need debt to learn responsibility." I funded a small respiratory scholarship in Alma's name for students entering pediatric care. It was not large. The first award was $1,000, enough to buy books, shoes, or 2 months of breathing room if someone stretched it carefully. At work, I remained what I had been before, calm in crisis, exact with numbers, careful with names. The difference was that people now understood my carefulness had never been fear. 8 months after the gala, I stood in my hallway with a small frame open on the table. The apartment smelled like furniture polish, and the orange peel Nico had left on a napkin beside his homework. Afternoon light came through the blinds in 7 narrow lines across the wall. Inside the frame were Alma's hospital volunteer badge, the red lockbox key tied to my old inhaler charm, and a clean copy of the letter confirming Nico's protected credit file. The key looked smaller behind glass. Nico stood beside me, holding the hospital bear by one leg. The missing button eye still had not been replaced. He asked why the key was in a frame, if it still worked. I touched the edge of the frame, where the wood felt smooth and new under my thumb, because some keys open things once, and then they remind you what stayed closed. He considered that for 4 seconds, then asked if the bear could be in the frame too when he was done needing it. I told him yes, but not yet. Not yet was important. Some things are allowed to stay useful before they become memory. I hung the frame beside the hallway light switch, low enough that Nico could see it, and high enough that the bear could not knock it crooked when he ran past with a backpack. Alma's badge caught the light first, then the key, then the clean letter with Nico's name printed where no debt followed it. Children aren't collateral, ever. If this story stayed with you, like the video, subscribe to By Then I Knew, and comment "Protected" if you have ever had to become the careful one in your family. And if you're listening from somewhere quiet tonight, tell me your city and the time. I read those,